Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi, everyone. It's the Mimi and Greg Show. It's difficult for me to stay cheery and happy when the world is just upside down right now. However, I am really grateful to have Greg Rucka to vent with, or rather listen to his Rucka Rants. No one says it better, and I urge listeners to take what we are saying to heart. Vote. It matters. We sum up the happenings of the week when this was recorded, September 24th, and it was certainly filled with a lot of crazy. So as always, please listen with an open mind. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He is also the writer for the hit film The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. And if you'd like to help keep this podcast going with a donation, you can be a patron of the show by visiting patreon.com/sifumimichan or my website. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Mimi.
I'm not going to lie to our listeners. I had some tech issues today, so I've said hello to you.
We just had a great opening 15 minutes that is now lost, and we're gonna try to recapture it.
We're gonna recapture it because
so it's not gonna sound nearly as spontaneous as we try to hit these same highlights. But let's go for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically, we started off with that. There's a lot that's happened in the last few days since we talked on Sunday, and
I mean, I think the big one for everyone has been the iOS 14 update. That was the
exactly. That's the biggest highlight. That's the top thing that we need to go over.
It's clearly the topic of national discussion.
Yeah, I mean, worldwide, really, if you think about it.
Really, yeah. I mean, let's talk widgets and so on.
And stacks.
Stacks, yes.
Yes.
I have not tried stacks yet. My daughter tried to explain stacks to me. I am still begrudgingly adopting some widgets, but I am annoyed that a lot of the things I want widgets for are not there. So, it's nice actually to have a conversation where, the biggest thing that happened was a tech update.
Right. I mean, naturally, in the world we are in today, that is the big news. Because 10 years ago, it really would have been.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so nice when you think about how ghastly the week could have been, just hypothetically,
hypothetically speaking.
We could have lost one of the pioneering justices of the 20th and 21st centuries, and be facing now a staggering and naked Republican hypocrisy that says, no, it was never about the president being able to protect a point on the basis of the will of the people. It was about us getting our way and fuck the rest of you. And we could, in theory, be living in some sort of nightmare world where there is such an undue and grotesque haste to take advantage of the situation that said justice's dying wish is within an hour ignored by the Senate Majority Leader, and leading to now a rush to nominate a woman to fill the seat, provided that she is arguably self-hating, and doesn't like the rest of her gender either, I guess. So, I mean, that could happen. We could be in the unprecedented situation of a criminal con man, compromised, politically inept Russian asset in the White House being in the position of having appointed not one, not two, but three Supreme Court justices in the course of his 4 years so far. that could be a particular nightmare. So that could have happened.
Right.
We could have so absolutely failed to address a global pandemic in our own country that the death toll from said pandemic has cleared 200,000 people in the past week. That could have happened. Well, the CDC continues to revise down guidelines and to issue statements of common sense, like wearing a mask may be more effective than a vaccine could be, only to take such statements down immediately, or to have, for instance, a senator from Kentucky who is what is going on, Kentucky? Both of them really gets into, tries to argue with Fauci, and reveals an absolute deliberate misunderstanding of what the doctor has said to play to a base. We could have, and this is just off the charts crazy. This would never happen.
It would never.
We could have a president say to the press when asked if he would abide by the results of the election and peacefully cede power, pretty much say no, he absolutely won't. That could have happened. So, right. And we can't forget this one, because this is science fiction stuff. This is Escape from New York stuff. We could have the president and his attorney general, who is one of the most loathed attorneys in the history of the country, whose own Justice Department hates his guts, declare not one, not two, but 3 American cities as quote unquote, anarchist jurisdictions, which when you just stop and think about that is an oxymoron. And then if you chase that through, is an attempt to disenfranchise primarily quote unquote blue cities that have consistently been protesting because they feel that the police department in those cities, at least, if not nationwide, has too much power. And that could, in theory, be illustrated by the fact that a grand jury returns on the officers who murdered Breonna Taylor, that effectively all 3 are exonerated, but one of them is going to get a little spanking because he fired bullets into white people's apartments. That all could have happened since the last time you and I recorded this podcast.
But that would never happen. That's too much for 1 week, Greg.
Yeah, and that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So,
I only laugh because otherwise I'll start crying.
Well, you don't.
That,
yeah,
right?
This is the thing. I wrote. I can't remember if we talked about it last week. I wrote the back matter for Lazarus Risen 5, and normally I'll answer a couple letters, and then have like a little essay section. There are no letters this time because the issue is going to come out October 28th. And I wrote, as of that day, these are the things that have happened today.
Yeah.
In the name of God, vote, right? And that issue is going to come out in a little over a month's time. And when people read it, they are going to have difficulty remembering the things I was talking about.
Yeah. Which is scary. That there's so much on a daily basis that we can't even keep up with.
We are off the map. And there is no way to look at this if you're paying any attention at all and not see the trouble we are just, and that's, I should rephrase that because it makes it sound like we weren't before. How bad it is getting and is going to get. Because it is not going to get any better between now and certainly November 3rd, and possibly for a long time after that.
Yeah.
I think that, look, I don't understand how somebody could call themselves a Republican ideologically 4 years ago and still stand with their party.
I don't understand it either.
I don't get it. And I'm sure, I am sure there are conservatives, and the problem with that is that that's a broad brush. There are people who are inclined to vote conservative who listen to this. And there are, and by that, I suppose we mean that conservatives tend to vote Republican. I don't understand. And I've said this before. Lark has said to me on more than one occasion, I miss the days when I used to be able to argue with my Republican friends about policy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This isn't about policy. And if you genuinely view yourself as a patriot in any way who loves your country, how you can look at this administration and this representation in Congress and in the Senate and think that this is what America is supposed to be, that this is how a democracy is supposed to work. I don't know how to begin to engage with that. It isn't. We, have so passed this point of being able to compromise on anything. And we are now quite literally being ruled by a minority. And it is a minority. And it is a minority who argue time and time again, culture war, value things, right? This is about our values. This is about protecting it. And it's not. They're lying to you. They are lying. They are absolutely lying. The number of people in the Senate who identify as Republicans and say, I am voting with my values, who are not lying, I could probably count on one hand. The rest of these sons of bitches are in it for the money, and they don't care about anything else. And the result of this is, it literally is the worst case Lazarus scenario. Mm-hmm. I more than ever am convinced that we are screaming towards a hot civil war. Trump has all but said it. If I don't win and am not granted the win, there will be a war. I will not leave. Well, guess what? Constitution says you can't do that. There was a piece in the Atlantic that came out yesterday about, how the Republicans are going to, and how Trump is going to try to keep the election. And it's horrifying. The thing that, is worth remembering and is so heartbreaking to me right now is that it wasn't that this system was easy to break. It's taken 40 years to do it. Mm-hmm. But once all the cracks were there, all you had to do was hit it with a hammer really hard. And the hammer's going to hit on November 4th.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what.
No matter what.
It's...
So this is either going to be a great result for the country. That the union will rise phoenix-like from the ashes, mm-hmm. or it's going to end it. It's going to be, what Neil Stephenson and William Gibson and so on have been writing about for the last several years about the balkanization of the United States. It is going to be the admission that the country is too big. And it's going to require redrawing maps. Okay, fine. I mean, if that's what it takes. 200 years, that's not a bad run. It's not a bad run. 250 almost. It's not bad. It's not bad. But the absolute inability and unwillingness to reconcile the country's history, to acknowledge the crimes of the past, to ignore them, to blame over and over and over and over and over again the victims, you know, for all of the vileness that apartheid was in South Africa, and there is no way to paint it that isn't, the concept and the wisdom of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission when apartheid was ended was brilliant. Let's put it all out on the table. Let's talk about it. Let's admit it. And this country doesn't do that. This country really, really wants to ignore.
Oh, yeah. There's so many parts of our history that does not get
we still have not
to learn from.
You got it. We still have not adequately answered, for instance, internment camps. And we absolutely haven't acknowledged slavery. We have never, ever acknowledged what we did to the indigenous peoples who were here before us.
Well, they got casinos, Greg.
Yeah. Well.
Wow. It's a horrific thing that
it is. I mean, it's just this is a great big ugly. So I know that I like how we're calling this Greg and Mimi on Culture Chat, and what it really is Mimi presses go and then
Rucka
sits
Rants.
back and Greg just goes snarl, spit. And
that's not true. It just depends on the subject, and we do a lot of back and forth. It's just that I like how you articulate, so I might as well let you articulate it because you do it so well.
Well, I am. There is a little bit of Lewis Black to me. I think I when I get angry, I get kind of funny. I'm not sure I get really funny.
But how can you not be angry right now? I mean, like you just said, opening of the show, it was like, how could this actually be real? We are literally in one of these dystopian futuristic stories, comics, whatever, any bad movie that you turn on that the beginning of the world's ending, like that's where I feel like we're at. And it isn't just COVID. It isn't just the pandemic. It's all of these other things, the state of our democracy, the lack of justice, I mean, literally, like you said, reading about the anarchists and like they're just making people so afraid that they need to vote for the ones that can protect them. And they're using the fear factor, and it works. That's what kills me. It's one thing that there's propaganda. It's just frustrating that it works. I'm in Florida, and I know that people really buy into this, and
they are. Yeah, because they're being told what they want to hear, and I mean,
it feeds off their inner fears, right? So they're like, well, yeah, that is something I've been concerned about, and then of course I'm all about it.
Part of it, certainly, but I think it is also. I think it's also that it goes back to the lack of critical thought. People don't want to have to challenge their beliefs. They don't want to have to defend what they think. And it's, I think, because they don't know how. We have lost the ability and the pleasure in the intellectual debate, in being able to listen to somebody and say, that's an interesting point, I hadn't considered that. Or, that is an interesting point, but don't you think it might be this? Or, any means of engagement like that. That's not what we do.
Yeah,
And
everybody's
that is,
defensive.
well, and it's absolute. And that comes from the top down. It is, there's an Aaron Sorkin line from the movie The American President
Oh,
where,
I love that
Douglas
movie.
is saying, this is advanced democracy, guys. This isn't easy. And it's true. And to have an advanced democracy requires an electorate that is informed and engaged. And since the early to mid 90s, and if you think about it, that's almost 30 years. That is over a generation, right? It has been pipelined, indoctrinated. You didn't have to listen to anybody else. All you had to do was listen to Rush Limbaugh saying wimpy feminazis trying to steal your whatever over and over again. Have the Clintons been involved in some shady stuff? I am sure they have. Hillary Clinton running, a child sex ring out of a Pizza Hut or whatnot. I mean, these things don't follow. Mm-hmm. But the more lies you tell, the bigger the lie you can tell. When you don't challenge the small ones, you can get away with the big ones. And Trump is the walking, talking embodiment of that. He is nothing but a liar and never has been called on it, never suffered for it, was never punished for it. And the reason that these things happen, as much as it is a moral and an ethical failing, is that it was greed. Trump lying was a great show for the media. Great show. Mm-hmm. They got clicks.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that was a huge reason why he won last time, is because they gave him all this free publicity. Oh, yeah. And I was so frustrated. And I am still so frustrated and worried. Yeah. Like my anxiety level, like I try to be pretty zen. Oscar and I do our whole meditation wellness bit, but let me tell you, this has not been a good week for me.
No, there's because all you can do is disconnect for a while, but it doesn't go away.
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't go away. Literally, sorry, go on.
No. I was just going to say the little action that I try to take still takes me to steps of anger and frustration. Like I'm trying to help people get registered to vote. And I've been, even just like Oscar's family members, whoever doesn't know. And then we've met other people that have said, yeah, they actually volunteer and help the homeless. And then here in Florida, there's been all these new things in the last month that make it even harder. Like she does an outreach program and she's like, now just literally the last month. And it's like, well, there it is. More voter suppression there. I mean, every turn we take, there's something, there's another roadblock. There's another, how can this be legal? How can this be okay? And we're just like, I'm trying to do, I'm going to turn my anger into activism. And even that is getting ruined because you can't even do an action without coming across more of the evil and more of the cheating,
and that's it, which tells you everything you need to know. If they believe that they are right, why do they need to cheat?
Right.
I mean, seriously, if they believe that they are morally correct, why cheat? Well, they cheat because they know they're not. They're going to lose. In a fair fight, they know they lose. So, this goes to deeper, bigger questions. It goes to the fact that, if anything, what has become abundantly clear is that the system is broken and it's almost irreparably so.
I mean, is this the rock bottom we have to hit in order to, like you said, rise from the ashes?
I think you got to break it. and that's what this administration has done. They've literally broken everything they can. That was the agenda. I mean, if you look at the appointments, right? We appointed a Secretary of Education who doesn't want people educated, right?
Yeah, never been to public school.
We've got, Health and Human Services, a guy who literally, doesn't care if poor people have a place to live. We've got an Attorney General who quite literally doesn't care if the government breaks the law, and does it with impunity, right? The only institution I think that has any integrity left, and I'm praying, is the military.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the thing was, this was done with malice aforethought. They did it from the start.
Yeah. This
is at the top. And they have now, and by they I mean the Republicans, and I don't believe that they're Republicans anymore. They're not.
No, that party's gone.
Yeah,
gone.
I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and I was like, just call them Nazis. I mean, that whether they like it or not, that's what they are. They're fascists. They don't have a problem with racists. Even if they, quote unquote, aren't racist themselves, they don't have a problem voting for them, which makes them racist.
Mm-hmm.
We have courts that have been stacked with, quote unquote, conservative justices. They're not conservative. What a conservative is, in the traditional definition of the world, is somebody who believes in conserving the Constitution, right? And that's not what they're doing. I mean, it's literally not what they're doing. So what they've turned conservative into is, I want things to be like they were in 1880 or 1830. Well, okay. Here's a news flash for you guys. Time marches on. So, there is a piece of me that goes, look, at a certain point, you're going to have to fumigate the whole fucking house. And the result of these 30, 40 years, and in particular the last 30 years, of the Fox Newses and the Breitbarts and the Alex Joneses and the Rush Limbaughs, is that they work so much on anger that it inevitably leads to violence.
Mm-hmm.
And there's now a guy who is saying, yeah, I want violence. That's what I want.
Oh, yeah. From day one, he wanted violence. He's like, I'm going to, you guys should be punching people at conventions. And I mean, he was inciting violence from day one. And that was okay. And yet he somehow is able to turn it around and make people afraid of all the quote unquote violence that's happening at protests.
Well, but it's exactly, it's always been the same thing with him. Every lie he tells is the truth about himself. Every single time, right? He is telling the truth about himself. It is always, I am blaming you for the thing I am guilty of. So now we've got all these people, and they're hopped up on anger, and they're primed to violence, and now we are face to face with the other real big problem this country has always had, which is guns.
Yeah.
There are a lot of guns. There are more guns than there are people. There are more guns than there are people in this country. So now we got angry, violently minded people, and they've got firearms. Well, what do you think's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, it's like, well, I know it was a bunch of old paint rags, and I know this was a jerry can of gasoline. And I know I poured the gasoline all over the old oily paint rags. And I know I lit a match, but I didn't know what would happen when I dropped it on the oily paint rag soaked in gasoline. Yes, you goddamn did. Okay? So what I was going to say a little bit ago is that we have these conversations, or Greg monologues, and then Mimi goes, calm down. But at the end of it, I always feel like we need to come back to the same place, which is we have to be brave. We have to have hope. We have to be prepared to do what we may need to do to the best of our abilities. And our abilities are individual. I can offer my, in Gimli's words, I can offer my axe in certain ways. There are other ways where my axe is not a help, it's a hindrance, right? And we have to, and it is gonna be, and we keep saying this too, every conversation we say this, it's gonna get harder and harder over the next several weeks, but we have to try to engage in self-care. We've got to protect ourselves and marshal ourselves. Because the rubber's hitting the road real soon. And we have to decide if on November 4th, we're going to just sit at home and take it, or if we're going to go outside and start shouting and eat the tear gas. It's scary times, man. Mm-hmm. There's just no way around it. It's really scary times. And if you are at all aware of it and are not worried, if not downright frightened, then either you're missing something or I am. And I am more than happy to admit that I may be missing something, but I don't think I am on this.
No. And we've been rolling down this hill for a while. Like you said, this is not, the last 5 months because of COVID. This has been years in the making. Yeah. The plan has been set. And then we got this last little, catalyst at the end of it in 2016. And it was like, we didn't realize this was really going to cause the wildfire. And it did.
And that it was, and that we don't have this conversation. I mean, I talk about, look, our civil war going hot and so on. Nobody seems to have gotten it that we're at war with Russia.
Yeah.
And that the reason
that they've been undermining they basically.
And the reason we're at war with Russia is greed. It all comes from greed. Mm-hmm. Putin is one of the wealthiest men in the world. By an astronomical figure. Like billions upon billions upon billions of dollars that man has amassed. And at the end of the day, it comes down to that. That's why the democracy had to be killed, because they were going to come for our money. They were going to make it so my $44 billion wasn't enough. It's like, ooh, well, how many more billion did you need?
And that was like one of the turning points. Like a few years ago, I thought, for sure, the Republicans are going to come back out, because if there's one thing they hate, it's, the Russians are coming. And there was always that
it turns out
underlying Cold War thing never ended for them. But it turns out that didn't do it either. No, where's our patriotism now? Where are you, standing up to be American and having those principles? And like you said, Greg, and you've said it, you've written it in all of your books, the greed supersedes everything.
Yeah.
Like that is so depressing.
Yep.
That you could just cash in all your principles, literally, right? Like that's there's
and I do wonder how much of it the fiction writer in me goes, how much dirt do they have? Like, I'm convinced.
Like, you've said this before.
But I am convinced that, there was a meeting in the White House with Lindsey Graham early on where they laid the photos in front of him. Yeah. And they said, you look really good in this one. This is the one we're going to drop to the media.
Yeah, but I mean, how bad could it be?
Well,
Just basically tear down our entire country and democracy and just cash that in for your
this
self-preservation.
this is the problem with blackmail, right? Once you bend to it, you never stop bending, right? And if, for instance, it is a photograph of if there is, I have to be careful because we don't want to be libelous.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a photograph of an elected official, male, with his penis in a young man's mouth, of legal age or not, and that candidate has run on their family values and blah, 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 that is career-ending and possibly criminal. And never, ever forget the power of shame, right? Because we have forgotten it, right? If we 15, 10, 5, 3 years ago, in particular, for instance, if Disney, I've thought about this many times, if Disney, for instance, when The Last Jedi came out, had literally gone to every one of their major stars, like all of the Avengers, everybody, and said, you got to get on social media and you got to say next time you see a tweet that is coming after the movie, after an actress, for instance, you have to say, not that's not cool, don't do it. You have to say, you're an asshole. You're an ignorant asshole. Knock it off. You need to embarrass them publicly, shame them publicly. That is your obligation when you are in a public role, right? The amount of megaphone power you have, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, right? The megaphone we have given you is so powerful. You need to now use it in defense of this decorum. Right? I've got a T-shirt sold by a woman here in town. It's got a business that says "Make racism wrong again." What? Why? I mean, again, again. But that's where we are, because it's now okay to be racist, and the reason it's okay to be racist is that nobody minds being called it now. Mm-hmm. These people don't care, and they don't suffer if they're labeled. They're rewarded for it.
Right. They're protected.
They're being rewarded for it. So we have lost the value of the public shaming. And part of what a society is, whether we like it or not, is an agreement to kinds of behavior. And if you are not punished for not behaving in the societally acceptable fashion, right? You are ostracized, you are shamed, you are cast out. We need scarlet R's.
Mm-hmm. I was like, tar and feathering coming back. And
I gotta. There is something to be said that says, no, somebody's got to put the sign up.
The problem is they would just wear them with pride now.
Right. Well, the flip side is we need to hit them with rotten tomatoes.
No, it is true. It's that as soon as those guys were marching with their tiki torches and they didn't get any backlash for that, I was like, wow, okay, we're just gonna like welcome everyone into the societal fold that this is okay, that they are not.
We have just said
terrorists.
this is
because they are terrorists. It's not freedom of speech. It's terrorism, and there's a difference. And I always had a huge issue with that. Like, I don't understand why it's okay to protect under these pretenses when, there are actual terrorist groups because they have caused harm. They have killed people. Our fellow Americans.
You got it. And but you'll note that was never. That case never came to court, right? Nobody ever brought these people up on a freedom of speech issue. That never entered into it. But look, I mean, now we're, like I say, you're gonna have to break it to fix it, and we're not that far from breaking it. So
yeah, I feel pretty broken.
Yeah,
I feel pretty broken. I mean, the thing I try to do now is I'm not going to engage with someone that has dug their heels in, they've made up their mind, because there's no sense in getting myself crazy. But I know that there are some rational people that are still out there that just are exposing themselves to the wrong media, the wrong news channels, and not educating themselves in what you and I and many of us believe that are the correct facts, right? And so, how do we then get through to people so that they know, like, there's no anarchist jurisdictions, that you don't need to be afraid of these things, it's not a thing. And if you actually saw the majority of these protests, and the majority that are peaceful, the ones you get to see on TV is where finally someone threw a rock, finally something happened, the media gets to do their favorite thing. I mean, it's just
I would love to see actual footage of what's been happening in Portland. Because what's happening in Portland is you get peaceful demonstrators walking, and there will be a bunch of cops lined up, and the cops will say, go away. They'll say, stop, you have to disperse. And they will start to disperse. And at that moment, the cops will open fire. They unprovoked. They will open fire. I am just, yeah. My problem right now, Mimi, is I don't know what my upside statement to you today is. I don't know what I have, other than, guess what, guys, it's getting really hard now. And
yeah.
And
well, we stay in the fight.
Well, but we now have to ask ourselves some serious questions about what that means.
Yeah. Yes, it's true.
Because the fight's going to become something very different. It isn't going to be writing letters.
Right. Texting your congressman and doing all the things that once felt like activism.
I love ResistBot, right? But we are coming, I think, very rapidly to a point where you're not going to be able to sit it out, and we are going to have to start considering who stays to fight and who doesn't, and where you go, and how you fight from there. It seems to me entirely plausible that by the time January rolls around, we're going to see states seceding.
Well, definitely not an upper. But like you said, we do try to always bring it back to something that's a little bit hopeful. And while this is definitively
not
the most depressing thing I think that happened this week, of course, is our RIP RBG, which is, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I don't know. I actually think the Breonna Taylor news is more depressing.
It's pretty depressing. But
for the grand jury to have come back with their findings as they did is such a naked exposure of how broken the system is.
Mm-hmm.
That there isn't another interpretation of what happened, right? You can mitigate, yes, mistakes were there. You can say it was manslaughter. But the fact that they're not charged with anything due to the protections of their job is absolute 100% proof that the police do not protect us. And us means all of us. The police protect themselves, and they serve privilege, which means private law. That's the truth. You would have thought that all of these far right, individual rights people would have been panicking over the fact that costs were rising over the last 20 years, but they weren't. And it's interesting to me that all these people who believe in that are, quote, individual freedoms and so on have fallen in line with fascism, which absolutely does not believe in an individual's freedom. So, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
you
just,
wanted to talk about RBG, so
I
go on.
do. But I was going to say, it's so disheartening, but I think that's how sad it's gotten that I'm not sure I really expected to go. I expected it to go a better way. Like there's just been so much disappointment after disappointment that it's kind of like, well, there goes another one. There goes another, just like there's another shooting. And it's so sad to me that that is what's been done to me, is where I'm not even surprised and barely even disappointed, to where it's like, well, that's just the way it is, right? We're kind of at that point. And like just trying, like I said, it's hard. It's really hard. It's been a hard week for so many reasons. But I did want to say with, RBG, it's just like the only thing I can hold on to is that this one person, this one woman did so many things. And so it gives me hope that each of us can still do something. Like if she could accomplish all these things, like one of these little things I read was like, hey, ladies, like if you have a credit card in your own name, if you have leased an
Yeah.
apartment or bought property or consented to your own medical treatment, or you played a sport in school, you can thank her for that, And I'm just thinking it really is true. And there's so many more. That's not just her. There's so many remarkable people that have done so many things. And if any of us can just do like 1%, right, then hopefully we can get ourselves out of this. And it does start with the vote. And even though it's stacked against us, even though there's cheating going on right here in Florida, like I'm seeing it and seeing the voter suppression, it's just, I'm trying to hold on to that 1%. Like Oscar and I's, like one of our things with Kung Fu and fitness is like, as a coach, as a teacher, like for us as ourselves, like we just try to be 1% better every day. Right.
Mhm.
And so for me, that's what I try to do. And I think if each of us can do that and we all push towards that, and then we're all doing our 1%, which in this case, everybody is get
Vote
registered to
is
vote,
vote.
get out there and do it. I have been begging, the younger generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs. I'm like, this is for you. It is your future that's screwed right now. And they don't want to engage, they're like, I don't understand politics. I'm trying to find a better way. And
I don't, I mean, yeah, okay.
yeah. Yeah. So, and like I said, like, instead of getting frustrated, I just see what I can do to find that, that relatability. Well, do you enjoy this? Do you enjoy your healthcare? Do you enjoy having these freedoms? It doesn't happen by accident. And it is so getting taken away right now. So many things
Yeah.
are being taken away. And so I look at RBG and I think like she accomplished so much that if we can all just do one little percent of that and at least go in towards that direction and not give up, then like that's what we have to do, right?
Yeah. But I mean, yes, and more.
And more. Yeah.
The thing that's going to decide this election more than anything else is getting those people who are like, I don't understand politics, or it doesn't matter, to actually go and vote.
Yeah.
Not voting is how we got here. I mean, that's literally how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you said at the opening, the president right now has chosen 3 Supreme Court justices. This is someone who did not have the majority vote
Yeah.
in an
And now,
election of this country, and this is not representing us.
and now there is a majority on the court, and there will be a strong majority on the court that is going to dictate the direction of this country for decades. Decades. So you know what? Anybody, look at you, next time you talk to one of these people who's like, well, I don't know, I don't get it. You say, look at it this way. They can pass a law now that says you can't read anime anymore because it's pornographic. They can now do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stop it. You will go to prison for owning it. That's your situation right now. That's what happens here.
Yeah, I think we need to find a bunch of those analogies and just like really nail it down in
Literally,
simple
it
form
is
for
literally
people so
like,
they can understand.
do you want to be able to have it? Look at it this way. You ever had a drink and you're underage? You're 18, you're old enough to vote. You're 20, but not 21, you can't drink. This court can now make it illegal and you could go to prison. It's not just illegal to do it. It's like, if you are found to have done it, you will never get a right to vote. It's a felony.
Yeah,
You're going to prison.
On your record forever.
Yeah, I mean, go down the line. Go down the line. This court will have the power to say, oh, you're a woman. You don't get to own property.
Mm-hmm.
This court has the right to say, you're a woman. You don't have the right to control your own body. That's literally what we are looking at.
I know.
And
it's so horrible.
And that's not gonna, I mean, that's not, like I say, that's not gonna be, oh, it'll be inconvenient for 5 years. That's the rest of your life, kid.
Oh yeah.
That's it's gonna be like that until you're 60.
Mm-hmm.
That was your choice. You didn't vote, so you voted for that. And that's the thing. If you do not vote, you are voting for these things.
Absolutely. A non-vote is a vote for.
Right. Now, all that doom and gloom said, right? Dems win, get the White House, get the Senate. Fine, you've got a 9-person Supreme Court. Boom, we're going to make it an 11, and we're nominating 2 more justices. This has happened before. This is in the history of the country. It didn't start at 9 justices, right? That's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Yep. So we can still show our voice. You know, we could still have an opinion about how this is going to go down, and it's not too late right now. It's not too late. But I mean, even Orlando, I mean, Florida, it closes October 5. You know, voter registration ends pretty early here, so it's like if you're not even registered,
yeah.
It's so I'm really, really, really urging everybody, please.
Yeah. Check. There's a very easy number you can text, actually. And let me type now. This makes for really, really good podcasting, by the way, when somebody's typing. You can go to voteamerica.com and literally on their webpage, you can check your registration status. There is, and there are all sorts of tools on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally is voteamerica.com. It's all one word.
Yeah. I'm going to link a ton of stuff here also. And then and especially for those of you in Florida, I have a lot of Florida listeners. Like I have like a really simple boom, boom, boom. If you're scared to go out for COVID, you don't want to do the mail thing, but you can get your ballot early. And I have the list of places that are drop boxes for early voter registration. You could go and put it in the actual box because it's actually kind of hard information to find, to be honest. So I put it in a nice, easy format, and I'm going to keep posting that probably every day. So please get out there, be a part of the solution.
All right. It's also there's vote.org again. Yeah. Man, I can't find it there, but you can do it via text as well. It literally takes no time. I mean, it literally takes no time. Check now as soon as you can.
Yes.
Because it literally will be too late.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that is our PSA for today. It's like, get out there, vote, get registered. We will be on it. And as always, I know it's a lot of doom and gloom, but guys, this is not fiction. This is not us talking about the next comic book arc. This is like for real, like what we're living in here in the US. So please take it seriously. And as always, Greg, I really, really appreciate these conversations. Even if the week is rough for me, it helps.
Next week, we will try to find something to laugh about. Oh, well, I'll leave you with a good one.
Well, next week we talk Atticus Kodiak, actually.
All right. You can wrap up on that and tell everybody, make sure you read it. I will leave you on this one. As was pointed out by somebody on one of my friends, Trump went to pay respects to RBG
Mm-hmm.
and was greeted with boos
Yes,
and
he was.
heckling and chants of vote him out. And I suspect other things that will not be printed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, for a narcissist like him, that's never going to stop bugging him. Like, no, I'm dead serious. He's going to be thinking about it all day.
Yes,
It's
I
going to
saw
keep him up. It will never, ever, he will die remembering thousands of people shouting boo and how much they hate him. Good.
And
on
that is
that
our
cheerful
happy
note,
thought.
Yes, next week we'll talk Atticus, okay?
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much as always, Greg. Take care.
All right, Mimi, you take care. Give my best to Oscar.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.